All my life, I tried to be the daughter they could be proud of, the quiet one, the careful one, the one who never asked for too much. But every time my brother smiled, my parents forgot I even existed. They took my savings, my dreams, even the room where I used to breathe. And the day they told me to give up that room for him, my heart shattered. That was the moment I decided to do something, what they never thought. My name is Brielle Johnson, and I'm 28 years old. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, in the same house where my parents still act like everything is perfect. Every Sunday evening, our family gathers around the same oak dining table we've had for years. From the outside it must look warm, roast in the oven, laughter echoing through the halls, but I know better. Inside, it's a battlefield dressed as tradition. I move around the table, arranging silverware with practiced precision. Every fork aligned, every glass shining under the chandelier light. I've done this since I was a child, and not because I enjoy it, but because it's easier to serve than to be seen. From the living room, my brother's voice carries over the sound of the clinking plates. I just hit 50,000 followers. Cameron announces, holding up his phone like a trophy. A brand just offered to send me new lighting gear for free. Dad lowers his newspaper, pride glowing in his eyes. That's my boy. You're really going places. Mom beams, resting a manicured hand on his shoulder. We always knew you'd make it, sweetheart. All your hard work is finally paying off. I swallow hard, carrying the basket of warm rolls to the table. My voice doesn't join theirs. It never does. They don't ask about my work, my week, or my life. To them, I'm still that quiet daughter finding her path. Even though I found it years ago, and it's paved with more success than they can imagine. Dinner begins, and as always, the conversation belongs to Cameron. Every topic bends toward him, his sponsors, his followers, his content strategy. I sit quietly, nodding when necessary, my hands folded neatly on my lap. I can feel their words brushing past me, like I'm part of the wallpaper. Brielle, Mom says finally, without looking up. Pass the mashed potatoes, please. Sure, I murmur. My tone is calm, even, the same one I've used for years to hide what's burning beneath. The night stretches on, and I listen to Cameron explain how he plans to redecorate his room for his next video shoot. He's describing colors, lighting angles, everything in obsessive detail, until Mom interrupts him with a thought that freezes the air. Actually, she says sweetly, the light in Brielle's room is much better. I pause, fork hovering above my plate. Dad looks at her, nodding. That's true. Cameron, you could use her room for your studio. It's bigger, brighter, perfect for what you're doing. My heart stumbles in my chest. Mom turns to me with that same polished smile she wears when she's about to ruin something. Honey, Cameron really needs the space. You can move into the smaller room downstairs. You don't mind, do you? Before I can answer, Dad's voice cuts in, firm, final. Either give him the room or find your own place. You're old enough to be on your own anyway. The sound of his hand hitting the table makes the glasses tremble. I stare at him, trying to process the words. Cameron smirks, spinning his fork between his fingers. It's not like you use it for anything important, right? The room feels smaller. The air, heavier. My chest tightens, but I don't cry. I won't give them that satisfaction. I pick up my glass of water, take a slow sip, and say softly, I'll give you my answer next Sunday. They all assume it means I'll give in like I always do. But as I set the glass down, something inside me shifts. That night, while they laughed in the living room, I sat alone upstairs, staring at the walls of the room they wanted to take from me. The room where I built everything they never cared to see. And somewhere between the ticking clock and the hum of the ceiling fan, I made a silent promise. They took my space, my worth, and my peace. But this time, I wouldn't just let it happen. I was going to do something they'd never see coming. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the soft light spilling from the hallway and the half-packed boxes I'd once used for college. The same thought kept looping in my head. They didn't even hesitate to take it away from me. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, my mind drifted back to the first time I learned how easily they could take what was mine. I was 15. Back then, I worked weekends at a small grocery store on the corner of Auburn Avenue, bagging produce, smiling at strangers, saving every tip in a shoebox under my bed. It wasn't much, maybe $800, but to me it was freedom. I wanted a laptop, something I could call my own, something that meant my work mattered. I still remember that day. The sun was bright, and I was counting the bills, wrinkled, uneven, but mine. That's when Mom appeared at the door, her voice soft, that kind of softness that only comes before a storm. "Sweetheart, your brother needs help with his film project. His teacher says it could get him noticed by the local arts program." I froze. What does that have to do with me? Before I could even close the box, Dad stepped into the room. "We'll pay you back," he said. "You know Cameron's project is important for his future." They didn't ask. They just took it. My savings, my first real effort at independence, gone. I didn't cry in front of them. I waited until the door clicked shut, then locked myself in the bathroom, the tile floor cold against my knees. I remember pressing my palms to my eyes so hard I saw stars. That was the night I made a promise to myself. No matter how kind my parents smiled, no matter how sweet their words sounded, I would never depend on them again. And now, 13 years later, here I was again. The same pattern. The same betrayal, wrapped in family warmth. Only this time, I wasn't that 15-year-old girl begging to be heard. They wanted my room, my space, the one corner of this house that felt like mine. Fine. They could take the room. But this time, I'd take something much bigger in return. The following week, I moved through the house like a ghost. Mom hummed while folding laundry, Dad scrolled through the news, and Cameron bragged about his upcoming brand partnership. None of them noticed how quiet I'd become, or maybe they did and just didn't care. Every morning before anyone woke up, I sat at my desk, the same desk they were about to take from me, and opened my laptop. The world they saw was simple, a daughter without direction, still figuring herself out. But behind that closed door, I'd built something they'd never imagined. For the past 3 years, I'd been running BJ Financial Consulting, an online firm I started with nothing but a free website template and late-night study sessions. At first, I worked with small clients, local boutiques, freelance artists, small businesses drowning in tax confusion. But the numbers started to grow, and so did my reach. Now, I had clients in 4 different states, 3 employees who worked remotely, and contracts worth more than my parents' yearly income combined. My company cleared $2.5 million last year, all from the very room my parents were now gifting to Cameron. They thought I was lost. I was quietly building an empire. My phone buzzed, a message from Chloe Brown, my oldest friend and one of the few people who knew the truth. "Chloe, still pretending you're jobless for the family?" "Me for now. But not for long." She sent a laughing emoji, followed by, "You sound dangerous." I smiled to myself. Not dangerous, prepared. That night at dinner, Cameron brought up the room again, as if it were already his. "I'll probably set up my lights where Brielle's desk is now. The natural lighting there is perfect." I didn't look up from my plate. "You might want to wait until I've moved out." He grinned. "Oh, so you're finally going?" Mom nodded approvingly. "Good decision, sweetheart. This will be better for both of you." They thought they'd won. I let them. Because sometimes the best revenge doesn't need an audience, it just needs silence and timing. That night, I opened my banking app and smiled at the balance. numbers that spoke louder than any words my parents ever said. For years, I'd been invisible in this house. Now, I was invisible by choice, because soon, they'd see exactly what I'd been doing all along. By Wednesday morning, my parents had stopped pretending it was a discussion. My room was officially Cameron's new studio, and I was the tenant overstaying her welcome. I came downstairs to find Dad scrolling through online listings for cameras and microphones while Mom compared paint samples. Cameron lounged at the table, sipping orange juice like a celebrity being catered to. "You'll have to clear out by next week," Dad said without looking up. "We're repainting before the new setup arrives." I stirred my coffee slowly, my pulse steady. "Sure," I said. "No problem." Inside, I was already calculating every step. I'd been planning my exit for months, just waiting for the right reason to leave. I guess they'd handed it to me. Later that afternoon, the house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the dishwasher. I walked into the kitchen to grab a glass of water and noticed Dad's laptop left open on the counter. Normally, I'd ignore it. But something in me hesitated. A tab at the top of the screen caught my eye: House Equity Refinance, pending approval. My breath caught. I shouldn't look. But curiosity, or maybe intuition, overruled guilt. I slid into the chair and scrolled through his emails. The numbers made my stomach twist. $160,000 in credit card debt. Another $40,000 tied to something labeled Cameron's business expenses. Scrolling further, I found receipts for new equipment, paid coaching sessions, and travel costs for content production. Every one of them connected to my brother's name. Then came the final blow, an email thread between my parents and the bank. They'd taken out a second mortgage on our house. My childhood home was drowning under loans they'd used to fund Cameron's influencer dream. I closed the laptop, my fingers trembling, a cocktail of anger and pity swirling in my chest. They weren't just blind, they were reckless. And they were about to lose everything. "Brielle." Mom's voice echoed from the front door. I straightened instantly, forcing calm into my face. "Just making coffee," I said. She smiled faintly, setting her purse down. "Don't forget Sunday. Cameron needs time to start setting up his space." I gripped the counter edge. "I remember." She walked away humming, her voice light and careless. But in my head, the decision was made. If they were so desperate to throw me out, fine. I'd leave, and show them what the invisible daughter had been doing behind that locked bedroom door all these years. But I wouldn't move far. No, I'd stay close enough for them to see what they'd tried to erase. That evening, I called Chloe. "Do you remember that listing you showed me last month?" I asked quietly. "The one behind my parents' house?" Her voice brightened. "The one with the private driveway and office space?" "Yeah. It's still on the market." "Why?" I smiled faintly, staring out the window toward the back fence of our property. "Because," I said, "I think it's time for me to move home, in a different way." 2 days later, I sat in a cozy corner booth at Maple Brew Cafe, my laptop open and a quiet smile tugging at my lips. Chloe slid into the seat across from me, her curls still damp from the rain. "All right," she said, setting down her coffee. "I'm dying to know what's going on. You sounded different on the phone." "I'm done," I said simply, stirring my drink. "Done playing the good daughter. Done being invisible." Chloe tilted her head. "So, what's the move?" I turned my screen toward her. The real estate listing glowed on the display, the 2-story colonial right behind my parents' house. Cream siding, wide backyard, perfect view of their back porch. Her eyes widened. "You're kidding. That's their back neighbor's place." "I know," I said, smirking. "It's poetic, isn't it?" She laughed, shaking her head. "Brielle, this is savage, and I love it." We spent the next hour reviewing loan options, and she helped me contact Marjorie Daniels, a realtor she'd worked with before. Within minutes, Marjorie called back, her tone crisp and professional. "I've reviewed your financials, Ms. Johnson," she said. "I can't lie, I'm impressed. With your income and assets, this deal will go through easily. We can close by next Wednesday if we move fast." Perfect. The same day Cameron's filming equipment was scheduled to arrive. I hung up, feeling a surge of satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. My chest tightened, not with fear, but with anticipation. That evening, as my parents laughed downstairs, I quietly printed the preliminary paperwork and laid it across my desk. The documents felt heavier than paper, like proof that I existed, that my efforts had meant something. While Mom fussed over dinner, I walked past the kitchen. "Where are you heading, sweetheart?" she asked, smiling sweetly. "Just out to meet someone about a place," I said, my voice calm. Dad chuckled. "Finally moving out? Well, about time. Maybe now you'll learn what the real world is like." I paused in the doorway, biting back the response that almost slipped out. They had no idea I'd been living in the real world for years, paying taxes, managing payrolls, building something from nothing. Instead, I just smiled. "You're right, Dad. It's time I learned." By the weekend, I'd transferred the down payment, 60% upfront. My lawyer confirmed the documents were clean. I wasn't just buying a house. I was buying independence. Standing in the empty living room during the final walkthrough, Marjorie turned to me with raised brows. "You're sure you want this place? Most people want to move away from their parents." I ran my fingers along the windowsill, looking out at the familiar backyard fence separating the two properties. "I don't want distance," I said quietly. "I want perspective." When I returned home, Cameron was pacing my soon-to-be former room, measuring tape in hand. "You'll be out by Sunday, right?" he asked. "The crew's bringing my lighting setup Monday morning." I placed my bag on the bed, meeting his reflection in the mirror. "You'll have the room," I said. "But I wouldn't unpack too much just yet." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" I smiled faintly, walking past him. "You'll find out soon enough." That night, while they watched a movie downstairs, I packed quietly. Not everything, just enough to move fast. Chloe arrived an hour later with boxes and determination. "This is insane," she whispered, laughing under her breath as we taped the last box shut. "Insane," I agreed. "But necessary." When I finally turned off the light and looked around the now bare room, a lump formed in my throat. For years, this space had been my sanctuary, my secret world. Now, it was just a room again. But soon, very soon, they'd realize it was never the room that made me powerful. It was me. Wednesday morning dawned bright and quiet. The kind of morning that feels like the world is holding its breath before something changes forever. At exactly 9 a.m., I stood in the driveway of my new home, my home, with a set of freshly cut keys glinting in my hand. The house sat just beyond the backyard fence of my parents' property. From my kitchen window, I could see the top of their oak tree and the edge of their porch roof. Close enough to see, far enough never to be touched again. Marjorie handed me the last of the documents and smiled. "Congratulations, homeowner." "Thank you," I said softly, staring at the empty rooms waiting to be filled with new memories. By 10 o'clock, the movers were carrying in my furniture. My desk, my shelves, my equipment. I directed them carefully, making sure everything was placed exactly as it had been in my old room. Only this time, the air felt different. This space belonged to me, every inch, every corner. At noon, I stood by the back window, sipping coffee from a paper cup, watching as Cameron's delivery truck pulled into my parents' driveway. He jumped out, directing the crew like a general at war. Giant ring lights, tripods, boxes of equipment, all carried through the front door. Mom came out a few minutes later, clapping her hands in excitement. "Careful with those boxes," she called. "They're expensive." From where I stood, unseen, I smiled. They had no idea. At 3 p.m., Chloe arrived with takeout and a bottle of sparkling cider. "So," she said, grinning as she looked around the house. "How does it feel to own a home behind enemy lines?" "Free," I said, setting down my cup. "Peacefully free." She followed my gaze out the window toward my parents' house. "They don't know yet, do they?" "Not yet," I said. "Sunday dinner seems like the right time." She laughed. "You're going to tell them during dinner? That's bold." "Not tell," I corrected. "Show." For the next few days, I unpacked slowly, one box at a time, one memory at a time. My office took shape first. The desk, the books, the laptop. I arranged the shelves with the framed certificates they'd never asked about. Each morning, I'd open my blinds and catch glimpses of my parents and Cameron through the trees. They were redecorating my old room now, bright paint, fancy furniture, all for a dream that was bleeding them dry. By Saturday night, everything was ready, the furniture in place, my files neatly stacked, the documents proving who I'd become waiting in a leather folder on my new desk. I sat by the window, the glow from my parents' house faintly illuminating the backyard. I could hear laughter drifting through the air, the same laughter that used to make me feel small. Not tonight. Tomorrow, they'd see me clearly for the first time. Not the quiet daughter. Not the backup plan. They'd see the woman who built everything they thought she couldn't. And this time, I wouldn't be sitting at their table, I'd be the neighbor behind them. The one they couldn't ignore anymore. Sunday arrived with the weight of memory. The scent of baked chicken and rosemary drifted across the backyard, just like it had every week of my life. For 28 years, Sunday dinner had been their ritual, one I'd always been part of, even when I wasn't really seen. But today, everything was different. I dressed with care, a tailored navy blue blazer, beige trousers, and my grandmother's gold earrings, quiet symbols of the woman they had underestimated. In my hand, I carried a leather folder holding every truth they had ignored for years. Business licenses, tax statements, bank documents, and proof of the home I now owned just beyond their fence. When I stepped into the kitchen, conversation stopped mid-laugh. Mom turned first, blinking in surprise. "Brielle, you came early." Her tone carried polite confusion, the kind reserved for guests, not daughters. Dad looked up from his plate, half-smile forming. "You moving your things out today? Cameron's waiting to set up." Cameron sat at the table, scrolling through his phone, not even bothering to look at me. "We already picked the new wallpaper," he muttered. I smiled faintly, pulling out a chair across from them. "No, I'm not here to move my things." Mom frowned, her smile faltering. "Then what are you?" I set the folder down on the table with a soft thud. "I'm here to talk." Dad sighed, already impatient. "Brielle, if this is about your room." "It's not about the room," I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. "It's about everything else." The room went quiet. Even Cameron looked up. "4 years, you've treated me like the extra piece in this family," I continued, keeping my tone level. "You never asked what I did, never cared to know. You decided my life for me, and when it didn't fit your expectations, you called it failure." Mom opened her mouth to speak, but I raised a hand. "Please, just let me finish." I slid the folder across the table to Dad. "Since you think I don't understand responsibility, maybe you'll understand numbers." He hesitated, flipping open the folder. The first page showed my company's annual report. The next, a bank statement. Then, property documents with my name on them. Brielle Johnson, owner. What is this? Dad asked slowly, scanning the figures. My company, I said simply. BJ Financial Consulting. I built it from scratch. We've grossed over $2.5 million in the last fiscal year. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, electric. Mom's eyes darted across the pages. This must be exaggerated, she said weakly. You couldn't possibly. I could, I said, leaning back in my chair. And I did. While you were paying for Cameron's sponsorships, his equipment, his followers, I was building something real. Cameron shifted uncomfortably, his phone forgotten. You're lying. I tilted my head, meeting his eyes. Am I? You can check the address on those documents. I pointed toward the window. Because the house behind ours, the one with the blue shutters, belongs to me. Mom turned toward the back door, her face draining of color. The one behind our fence? That's right, I said softly. I closed on it Wednesday. The sound of her coffee cup hitting the table echoed like a crack. Dad's voice broke the silence. You bought that house? With my own money, I said. No handouts. No help. No pretending. For once, Cameron had nothing clever to say. He just stared mouth open, as the reality set in. The sister he'd mocked was the one who'd built the future none of them could touch. Mom recovered first, her tone fragile and forced. We're happy for you, sweetheart. I smiled thinly. You don't have to be. I stood, collecting the folder. I just wanted you to know, I'm done fighting for a place in this family. You told me to leave my room, so I did. I glanced toward the window, my voice steady. And now, every morning, you'll see exactly what I built when you weren't looking. As I walked to the door, the weight I'd carried my entire life began to lift. Behind me, no one spoke. Outside, the sunlight broke through the clouds, falling across the fence that divided their yard and mine. For the first time, it didn't look like a barrier. It looked like freedom. Days turned into weeks, and silence became my new peace. The tension that had once filled every corner of my parents' house now drifted across the backyard fence like smoke from a dying fire. They didn't come to visit. They didn't call. And that was fine. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't need them to. I woke up each morning to sunlight streaming through the wide windows of my home office. The same kind of light they'd said was better for Cameron's studio. It illuminated my desk, my paperwork, and the plaque on my shelf that read, Brielle Johnson, founder and CEO, BJ Financial Consulting. Every morning, I made myself coffee, opened my laptop, and began working with clients who trusted my expertise. Something my family never could. From my window, I could still see their backyard. Their once busy house had grown quiet. The laughter, the clatter, the noise, all gone. I'd heard through neighbors that the sponsorships Cameron depended on had vanished after his fake follow account was exposed. The debt they'd hidden finally came crashing down. A week later, a for sale sign appeared in their front yard. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just stood by my window watching, remembering every time they'd made me feel small in that house. Every time they'd told me to give up something for the family. Now, the roles were reversed. Chloe came by that afternoon with fresh flowers and a grin. So, they're moving? She asked. I nodded. Looks like it. Do you feel better? I thought about it for a moment, staring at the home that had once been my whole world. I feel free, I said quietly. And that's better than revenge. That weekend, I hosted my first small gathering, colleagues, clients, and Chloe. Laughter filled my new home, echoing off the hardwood floors. It wasn't loud, but it was genuine. Later that night, as I stood on my porch with a glass of wine, I saw headlights pull into my parents' old driveway. They stepped out slowly, Mom, Dad, and Cameron, looking smaller than I remembered. Mom glanced in my direction. For a moment, our eyes met. She hesitated, then lifted her hand in a half-wave. Not proud, not apologetic, just human. I raised my hand in return, offering a quiet acknowledgement. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation. Just recognition that the story had changed. They had told me to leave my room. So I left, and built a life right behind theirs. A life they could see every single day, shining through the windows they once thought were theirs alone. And in that glow, I finally found what they never gave me. Not validation, not approval, but something far more powerful. Peace.